By sunrise, the story moving through Brooks Family Bakery was that Emily had been fired for endangering the hotel contract. That was the version Diane repeated. According to her, Emily had allowed a rain-soaked stranger into the staff corridor in the storm. She had taken bread from the hotel tasting batch and given it away without permission. She had placed one man's hunger above the jobs of everyone in the building. Emily had no title with which to answer it. Vanessa was listed as creative director. Diane owned the bakery. Emily's name appeared only on supply orders, invoices, and handwritten recipe notes nobody bothered to read. So when Diane held out her hand for the keys, no one stepped forward. The stranger sat beside the rear heater, water pooling beneath his damaged shoes. He watched Emily absorb every accusation without mentioning that she had spent a month correcting Vanessa's failed recipes, negotiating overdue supplier accounts, and building the presentation for Cole Heritage Hotels. Vanessa placed the empty bread tray in front of her. "You chose him over this family." Emily looked at the stranger. He lowered his eyes, ashamed that accepting food had cost her so much. "No," Emily said. "I finally understood what this family chose a long time ago." One employee stopped folding boxes. Another stared down. Vanessa's smile disappeared, but Diane tightened her grip on the keys. Before leaving, Emily pulled a notebook from beneath the counter. Inside were the original measurements, test results, and dated revisions for every recipe Vanessa planned to present as her own. She did not threaten them with it. She placed it inside her suitcase. 20 minutes later, Emily walked into the storm. The stranger followed, carrying the half loaf she had given him. Diane locked the door. At 9 o'clock, she said, they would present Emily's work to Cole Heritage Hotels and secure the contract without her. They believed they had protected their future. In truth, they had just fired the woman holding it together. The rain had soaked through Emily's coat by the time she reached the bus shelter 3 streets away. She set the suitcase beside the bench and held its handle with both hands. Inside were 4 changes of clothes, her father's photograph, the recipe notebook, and less than $200. 10 years of work had left her with no savings account, no formal title, and no address that still belonged to her. The stranger stopped beneath the shelter. "I'm sorry," he said, "for being hungry? For being there when they decided to do that. They did not decide tonight." Emily looked back toward the bakery. Tonight was only the first time they said it clearly. A taxi slowed near the curb, then began to pull away after the driver saw the man's clothes. The stranger stepped forward and spoke through the open window. His tone was quiet, but it carried the certainty of someone accustomed to being heard. Emily noticed. "You said you had no money." "I said my wallet was in a car that had been towed." "That is not the same thing." "No," he admitted. "It isn't." He asked the driver for 2 separate rooms at a small motel near the highway. Emily did not move. "I don't accept gifts from people whose last name I don't know." For the first time, he almost smiled. Adrian Cole. The name was printed across the presentation folder Diane had guarded for weeks. Emily looked from his ruined shoes to the mud on his jacket. "You expect me to believe you own Cole Heritage Hotels?" "No. I expect you to come out of the rain. You can decide what you believe after you sleep." The motel clerk recognized him before Emily did. Her posture changed when Adrian gave his name. She abandoned the deposit policy and offered to contact the highway patrol about his vehicle. Emily stood near the vending machines, feeling foolish and suspicious. "I was not pretending to be homeless," Adrian said. "Not exactly." He had spent the evening inspecting one of his older hotels without the staff knowing who he was. Complaints had reached him about employees treating guests differently according to their clothes and perceived wealth. He had rented an ordinary car, dressed simply, and left his assistant behind. Then the storm pushed the car off a flooded road. His phone died. His wallet and luggage remained inside when the vehicle was towed. "What began as an inspection became a very bad walk," he said. "So you were testing people." "I was trying to see what my reports were hiding." "And what did you see?" "More than I wanted to." Emily thought of Diane calling him filthy and Vanessa laughing while the employees remained silent. Adrian gave her the room key. "I will return in the morning." You don't need to solve my life. I know. The answer came without offense. The room was narrow but clean. Emily placed her father's photograph beside the bed and opened the notebook. The first pages contained his handwriting. Later pages held hers. Corrected measurements, failed batches, supplier notes, and the small decisions that kept the bakery working while Vanessa stood in front of customers. Emily had believed protecting the notebook meant protecting her father's legacy. Now she wondered whether leaving her name off the work had protected anyone except the people using her. She slept for less than 4 hours. At 7:30, someone knocked. Adrian stood outside in clean trousers and a borrowed coat. A dark car waited behind him. Nothing about him resembled the exhausted stranger, except the paper bag in his hand. Inside was the remaining half-loaf. I did not finish it, he said. It seemed important not to waste it. Emily let him inside but remained standing. If you are here to offer Diane the contract because I fed you, don't. I am not. I am also not buying the bakery, punishing your family, or offering you money. He placed one printed page on the desk. Cole Heritage Riverside was hiring a kitchen operations assistant. The duties included invoice entry, inventory checks, supplier schedules, event coordination, and loss reports. The salary was ordinary. The hotel was old, understaffed, and performing badly. The application deadline was 48 hours away. I do not have hotel experience, Emily said. You have operations experience. I do not have a degree. The posting accepts practical experience. And if I apply, human resources will test you. A panel will interview you. I will not sit on it or tell them to hire you. Then what are you giving me? A place where your application will be read instead of discarded. Adrian left the page where she could choose to take it. I cannot promise that door leads anywhere, he said, only that it is real. After he left, Emily opened her old laptop. The battery worked only when the cable was bent against the table. The first blank field asked for her current position. For years, Emily had written whatever title Diane preferred: kitchen assistant, family support, bakery staff. She deleted each one. Then, beneath her own name, she typed, Operations and Production Coordinator. It was the first professional title she had ever given herself. This time, she intended to prove it. Emily submitted the application at 11:42 the next morning. The confirmation email arrived instantly. The doubt stayed longer. For 2 days, she studied every term in the job description. Food cost variance. Purchase order reconciliation. Event yield. The language was different, but the work beneath it was familiar. Count what came in, track what went out, and find where the numbers stopped matching reality. The first test took place in a training room at Cole Heritage Riverside. Emily received a sample inventory report, 3 supplier invoices, a staffing schedule, and 45 minutes to identify the errors. She missed 2 software shortcuts and calculated a labor ratio by hand, but she found a duplicate produce charge, a missing delivery credit, and a banquet order that exceeded the confirmed guest count by 80 meals. One interviewer looked up. How did you catch that? The linen request was for 220 guests, Emily said. The food order was for 300. Either 80 people plan to eat without chairs, or the order is wrong. The woman at the end of the table wrote something down. The panel asked about certifications and management experience. Emily did not exaggerate the bakery. She explained what she had actually done and where she still needed training. The offer arrived that afternoon. Kitchen operations assistant. 21-day probation. Emily accepted before fear could rewrite the decision. Cole Heritage Riverside had once been the best hotel near the riverfront. Now its brass fixtures were dull, its carpet showed hurried repairs, and half the staff seemed accustomed to solving emergencies with apologies. Grant Holloway met Emily in the service corridor on her first day. He looked at her temporary badge before looking at her face. Mr. Cole sent your application. He made sure it was reviewed. That is a polished way to say the same thing. The panel made the hiring decision. Grant smiled without warmth. Then proved they were right. He assigned her to the late inventory shift, where the walk-in freezer stung her hands through thin gloves and the invoice system froze whenever 2 users logged in at once. Chef Mateo Ruiz gave instructions quickly and expected them remembered. Nora Ellis from accounting showed Emily how to match purchase orders against receiving records. Check the attachments, Nora warned. The summaries are cleaner than the deliveries. By the 4th day, Emily knew which suppliers arrived late and which storage shelves were marked incorrectly. She also learned what people said when they assumed she could not hear. The CEO's charity case, his secret girlfriend, a woman who had fed the right man at the right time. Emily wanted to correct every rumor. Instead, she kept her reports precise and arrived early. On the 6th day, she made the mistake Grant had been waiting for. A conference order required 160 trays of breakfast pastries. Emily entered 106. The error was discovered after 6 in the evening, when the supplier had closed and 300 guests were expected at 7 the next morning. Grant called her into the kitchen while Mateo and 2 shift leaders watched. Would you like to explain how the system confused you? It didn't. I transposed the numbers. Grant paused. He had offered her an excuse, and she had refused it. 1 written warning during probation. A 2nd ends your employment. Emily signed the notice, then asked Mateo for the production list. She called 6 local bakeries. 4 refused. 1 could supply 30 trays. Another offered unbaked dough if the hotel collected it before midnight. Emily arranged a driver, recalculated oven capacity, and divided the missing order between the pastry team and the 2 bakeries. She worked beside the night staff, shaping dough, labeling allergens, and checking each tray against the event sheet. At 5:38 the next morning, the final rack came out of the oven. The conference opened on time. Grant arrived after 7 and found nothing visibly wrong. You were fortunate, he said. No, Mateo answered from behind the counter. She made a mistake. Then she fixed it. Later, Nora brought Emily a copy of the corrected purchase order. Keep this, she said. Not to hide the mistake. To show the repair. At the bottom of the invoice screen, Emily noticed Grant's approval code on 3 emergency food charges from the previous month. Each had been classified as spoilage. The amounts were too high for the quantities listed. All 3 came from the same supplier account. Emily printed nothing. She wrote the invoice numbers in a small notebook and closed the screen. She was no longer only trying to keep her job. She was beginning to see what the job had been hiding. 3 days later, Adrian arrived for a scheduled property inspection. He found Emily in the receiving bay checking delivery temperatures, not waiting in the lobby for him. I heard the conference opened on time, he said. I also entered the order incorrectly. And corrected it. Both belong in the record. Adrian glanced toward Grant's office. Do you want me to ask how the probation is going? No. If you ask my manager whether he is treating me fairly, I become the woman who reports to the owner whenever work becomes difficult. He accepted the boundary without arguing. Then I will ask only you. It is difficult, Emily said. I am staying. Adrian left without speaking to Grant about her. That restraint mattered more than another favor would have. By the 12th day of probation, Emily knew the hotel's waste reports were inconsistent in ways Rush staff could not explain. Chicken listed as spoiled on Tuesday appeared again on Thursday's receiving sheet. Produce invoices did not match storage logs. Several deliveries carried signatures from employees who had not been working when the trucks arrived. Emily began with a spreadsheet. She built 5 columns. Ordered, delivered, stored, used, discarded. Then she added a 6th for the person who verified each step. It was simple enough for the kitchen team to use and specific enough that numbers could no longer disappear inside general categories. Mateo examined the first week. We did not throw away this much meat. I know. Then where did it go? I don't know yet. Emily asked Nora for approved purchase orders and compared them with the receiving attachments. The pattern widened. Deliveries marked complete lacked photographs. Credits for rejected goods never reached the monthly summary. One vendor had billed the hotel twice for the same shipment under slightly different invoice numbers. Emily brought the spreadsheet to Grant. He scrolled through it without comment. This is not part of your assignment. It could reduce food cost variance. It could also create work for people already behind. It takes less than 3 minutes per delivery. Grant looked at her temporary badge. You still have 9 days of probation. Prove you can perform the job you were given. Emily almost apologized. Instead, she asked, "May I test it for 1 week without changing the official system?" 1 week. He told her to email the template and instructions to him first. The next afternoon, Grant presented a new receiving control process during the department head meeting. Emily was not invited. She learned about it when Mateo returned holding a printed copy of her spreadsheet. Grant's name appeared beneath the title. "You made this." Emily studied the page. Even the example about missing berry credits came from her notes. Her first instinct was familiar. Let it go, make the system work, and trust that people would eventually recognize who had built it. Nora found her beside the printer. "You sent him the original file. He asked for it. Did you keep the email?" Emily nodded. "Good. Archive it. I don't want to look difficult. People who take credit depend on that sentence." That evening, Emily opened the email she had sent Grant. The attachment carried her name in the file history, but not on the document. She added a footer, "Prepared by Emily Brooks, Kitchen Operations Assistant." Then she sent a brief message to Grant, Mateo, Nora, and Regional Operations. "For accurate pilot tracking, I am attaching the original version of the receiving control template I developed on March 14, along with the updated guide. I will compile the weekly results for review." She read it 3 times before pressing send. Grant appeared at her desk within 10 minutes. Copying regional operations over a kitchen worksheet was unnecessary. They requested visibility on cost, control pilots. "I did not authorize you to describe it as your project. The file history and original email already do." He folded the printout in half with precise pressure. "Do not confuse initiative with authority." "I won't, and I won't confuse authority with authorship." Grant walked away with the page. The regional office neither praised Emily nor reprimanded Grant. The director approved a 30-day pilot and required them to report the results together. It was not justice. It was scrutiny. Grant changed Emily's schedule. She was assigned closing inventory after morning receiving shifts. 2 training sessions disappeared from her calendar. When she asked, Grant said operational needs came first. Emily documented each change and kept the pilot running. By the second week, the process identified 2 duplicate invoices, 3 missing credits, and repeated charges for products refused at delivery. The numbers were not large enough to prove fraud, but they were too consistent to dismiss. Her probation review arrived on day 21. Grant called her technically capable but resistant to management direction. Mateo rated her reliable under pressure. Nora attached the corrected conference order and noted that Emily had reported her own mistake before anyone else discovered it. Human Resources extended her employment. Grant signed last. That night, Emily reconciled the week's records. Near the bottom of one vendor report, she found 6 delivery signatures written in the same hand. The employee names were different. One belonged to a porter who had left 4 months earlier. Emily checked the account. It was the same supplier connected to the emergency spoilage charges she had noticed after the conference. She saved the report to the authorized audit folder, recorded the file number in her notebook, and closed the system. For years, people had depended on Emily doing invisible work. Grant had assumed invisible meant unrecorded. The wedding crisis began with a phone call at 2:07 on Saturday afternoon. The reception began at 6. 240 guests were expected when the contracted pastry supplier announced that its delivery van had broken down 40 miles away. The refrigeration unit had failed with it. The wedding cake and desserts could not be used. Grant read the message once, then handed the phone to Mateo. "Tell Banquets to remove dessert from the package and prepare a refund." Mateo stared at him. "The bride chose this hotel because of the pastry display. Then she can choose compensation." Emily stood beside the service desk, reviewing the event sheet. The family had reserved the ballroom 18 months earlier. Dessert appeared in every planning note. "There may be another option," Emily said. Grant looked toward her. "We are not improvising a wedding with grocery store cakes. No, we divide the work." She called the bakeries listed in the hotel's local vendor file. The first had no capacity. The second could provide sheet cakes but no decorations. The third, a family bakery 6 miles away, had enough sponge layers but lacked staff for assembly. Emily mapped the order across 3 kitchens. One bakery would make the sheet cakes. Another would supply tart shells and fillings. The third would send undecorated sponge tiers. Mateo's pastry cooks would complete the display on site. Grant shook his head. "That creates 3 times the liability. It also gives us a finished service before 6. And if one of them fails, then we adjust the design instead of canceling the promise." He gave her 3 hours and told her the failure would be attached to her record. Emily began assigning tasks. She moved 2 prep cooks from the afternoon tea service, arranged separate pickups to avoid a single delayed route, and asked Nora to create emergency purchase orders with itemized approvals. She photographed every product at receiving and recorded who accepted it. The new control process from her pilot became the only reason the kitchen could combine goods from several vendors without losing track of allergens, quantities, or cost. By 4, the first cake layers arrived. At 4:20, one bakery called to say its driver had gone to the wrong entrance and was trapped behind the parade blocking River Street. Emily sent a bell captain with a luggage cart through the pedestrian route. At 4:45, Mateo discovered the tart shells were smaller than the dimensions listed in the event plan. "We cannot build the display they approved," he said. Emily looked at the sketch, then at the ballroom tables already covered in white flowers and candles. "We don't copy the drawing," she said. "We change the presentation." She replaced the single large dessert wall with smaller stations around the ballroom. Each station matched one flavor and included handwritten cards explaining that the desserts came from local bakeries. The solution looked deliberate. It was not flawless. Emily misread the final timeline and scheduled the cake reveal 15 minutes before the photographer's return from the outdoor portraits. The banquet captain caught the problem while the bride and groom were still outside. Emily stopped the musicians, moved the speeches forward, and took responsibility when Grant demanded to know who had changed the sequence. "My timing was wrong," she said. "The revised order is mine." Grant looked ready to remove her from the floor. Then the bride entered the ballroom. She stopped beside the first dessert station and read the card naming the neighborhood bakery that had made the lemon tarts. "These are from Bell Street?" she asked. Emily nodded. "The original supplier had an equipment failure. 3 local bakeries helped us rebuild the service. You were going to hide that. I was going to make sure you still had what we promised." The bride looked around at the separate displays. "My grandmother used to take me to Bell Street after school." She asked Emily to keep the cards in place. By the time the cake was cut, guests were moving between the stations, asking about the bakeries and photographing the displays. What Grant had feared would look improvised became the most discussed part of the reception. The next morning, the bride sent a letter to regional operations. She did not praise the hotel for perfection. She described how Emily had protected the day without lying about what had gone wrong. Regional management reviewed the event, the purchase records, and the results of the inventory pilot. Waste had dropped 11% in 4 weeks. Missing credits had been recovered. Emergency purchases were now traceable. Emily was promoted to Event Operations Coordinator. Adrian did not attend the review and did not sign the decision. He congratulated Emily later at a regional operations dinner, after Mateo, Nora, and the banquet team had already been recognized. "You made them notice what you can do," Adrian said. Emily shook her head. "The kitchen made the recovery possible. I organized it. You are allowed to take credit without taking all of it. And the company is not allowed to turn me into a story about the CEO discovering hidden talent." Adrian considered that. What should the story be? That a team was trusted to solve a problem, and the person who coordinated them was evaluated on the result. He raised his glass to the distinction. Emily noticed that he did not try to make the moment about the night they met. Grant congratulated her in front of the department heads, then returned to his office and closed the door. Later that afternoon, Emily opened the shared vendor inbox. A new message waited from Brooks Family Bakery. Vanessa had written that Emily Brooks had personally recommended the bakery for a long-term pastry partnership with Cole Heritage Riverside. Emily had made no such recommendation. Below Vanessa's message was Grant's private reply. Send the pricing sheet directly to me. Do not copy Emily until the proposal is ready. The proposal disappeared from the shared inbox the next day. Emily assumed vendor compliance had rejected it. She did not know Grant had moved the file into a private review folder. 2 years after that Saturday reception, Emily no longer carried a temporary badge. Her title was Assistant Operations Manager, earned through performance reviews, training courses, and fixing problems before guests noticed them. She had learned budgeting, vendor compliance, labor planning, and how to speak in meetings without surrendering the last sentence. During those 2 years, Adrian appeared at quarterly strategy sessions, but never at Emily's performance reviews. Their conversations were not always easy. When he proposed delaying repairs to the employee residence annex, Emily challenged the savings estimate in front of the regional team. He made her defend every number, then restored the funding after she proved deferred repairs would cost more. 3 months before Grant's investigation, 12 regional leaders attended a planning dinner downtown. Emily and Adrian left the restaurant at the same time, still debating whether guest ratings should outweigh staff turnover in executive bonuses. A photographer across the street captured them alone in the frame, though the rest of the group was only a few steps behind. Neither of them noticed the camera. Grant eventually would. She still checked the loading dock herself. That was how she noticed Brooks Family Bakery on the temporary supplier list. The name appeared between 2 approved pastry vendors, marked as an emergency local partner. Beneath it was a note, recommended by Emily Brooks. Emily read the line twice. She had recommended no one. The vendor file included an email chain from an old address she had used years earlier. One message carried a cropped screenshot of a conversation with Vanessa. You know the hotel always needs good local suppliers, Emily had written. The next line was missing. What she had actually said was, you know the hotel always needs good local suppliers, but I cannot be involved in any decision concerning the bakery. The screenshot ended before that sentence. Emily opened the approval history. Grant had authorized the temporary arrangement. 3 deliveries had already been completed, and a long-term proposal was scheduled for Monday's operations vote. She sent a formal disclosure to compliance before speaking to anyone else. I have a prior family relationship with Brooks Family Bakery. I did not recommend the vendor and request removal from all evaluation, approval, and payment decisions concerning this account. Then she asked Nora to preserve the original file history. Nora studied the cropped message. This is deliberate. Yes. Do you want me to flag the invoices? Flag the record. Do not stop payment without a review. The employees there still need to be paid. Grant summoned Emily before lunch. He left the disclosure open on his monitor. You could have brought this to me first. The vendor record says I recommended them. I needed the correction documented. You are treating an old family misunderstanding like corporate misconduct. Someone altered a message and attached my name to an approval. Vanessa said you supported the partnership. She was wrong. Grant leaned back. Or perhaps you changed your mind after benefiting from the arrangement. Emily felt the old instinct rise, the need to explain every year of labor and every recipe she had repaired. She let it pass. My disclosure stands. Vanessa arrived at Riverside that afternoon wearing a cream suit and carrying presentation boxes tied with gold ribbon. She moved through the lobby as if the contract were already hers. When she saw Emily, she smiled. I was wondering how long it would take you to notice. You used my name. I referenced our conversation. You removed the sentence where I refused involvement. Vanessa set the boxes on a side table. You always make ordinary business sound like a betrayal. You told the hotel I recommended you. And why shouldn't you? Everything you know began in our bakery. What exactly do you think I owe you? Gratitude. For being allowed to work without a title? For watching you present my recipes? For sleeping in a room that disappeared when I stopped being useful? Vanessa's smile thinned. We gave you experience. Adrian gave you access. Now you act as though you built yourself alone. No, Emily said. I had help. I also did the work. Those are not the same thing. Vanessa lowered her voice. The bakery expanded because Grant said the hotel wanted a regional partner. We leased a second production space and borrowed against the building. How much? That is not your concern. It becomes my concern when you use my name to secure the account. Vanessa opened one box. Inside were pastries based on Emily's old formulas, altered with cheaper fillings and heavier glaze. If this contract disappears, the bakery may not survive. Emily closed the box. Then you should not have built the expansion on a contract you did not have. Diane called that evening. You cannot humiliate Vanessa in front of the hotel, she said. Whatever happened between us is private. Vanessa used my identity in a corporate submission. She used your connection. After everything the bakery gave you, that is hardly theft. Emily stood beside the loading entrance, where trucks moved through the rain. The bakery did not give me my work. It took my work and removed my name. You always turn sacrifice into cruelty. Emily looked at the keys clipped to her belt. They opened rooms she had earned the right to enter. I do not owe this family silence because I once slept behind the shop. She ended the call. The quality review began the next morning. The deliveries from Brooks Family Bakery showed inconsistent portion weights, substituted ingredients, and prices higher than those in the temporary proposal. One invoice charged for premium butter. The receiving photographs showed commercial shortening. Nora found something worse. The account had received expedited approval 3 weeks before Emily's disclosure. Grant had approved the rate increase personally. Attached was a financing letter from a local bank. It referenced an anticipated 12-month contract with Cole Heritage Riverside as justification for the bakery's expansion loan. The hotel had never issued that contract. By Friday afternoon, Emily understood that Vanessa had borrowed money against Grant's promise, and Grant had kept Emily outside the conversation on purpose. Monday's vote would decide whether Brooks Family Bakery received the long-term agreement. It would also decide whether Emily's name became the shield for a deal she had never made. By Friday at 4, the bakery invoices no longer looked like the main problem. They looked like camouflage. Nora spread 6 months of vendor records across the audit room beside accounting. Food, laundry, maintenance, shuttle service, temporary labor, replacement equipment. Different companies, different logos. The same mailing address appeared on 4 of them. An office park in Delaware, Emily said. Nora turned her monitor. Suite 218. 2 vendors listed local warehouses, but their tax forms routed through the same registered agent. Emily pulled the Brooks Family Bakery file closer. Grant's approval code sat beside an expedited rate increase. The amount was suspicious, but small compared with the rest. A laundry vendor had charged Riverside for twice its usual volume. A maintenance company billed for elevator repairs completed by hotel engineers. A transport contractor invoiced weekend shuttles on dates when no vehicles had arrived. Emily opened the occupancy reports. Guest counts were steady. Banquet revenue had improved. Waste had fallen after the receiving pilot. Yet, the reports sent to regional leadership showed declining margins and rising losses. Someone changed the summaries, Emily said. Nora opened the archived folders. The department files match what we have, the executive versions do not. They compared a banquet report with the version attached to Grant's monthly review. $42,000 had been moved from event income into deferred recovery. A maintenance credit had vanished. Vendor penalties had been recorded as hotel expenses. One alteration could be an error. There were 27. Emily understood the purpose. The goal was not only to steal through inflated invoices. The numbers were being arranged to tell a story. Riverside was failing. Riverside needed to be sold. Nora searched Grant's shared executive folders within her accounting access. Near the bottom of a directory marked Capital Planning, she found Riverside Strategic Exit. The file had been created 5 months earlier. Brooks Family Bakery had joined the supplier list only 6 weeks ago. The proposal recommended selling the hotel to Northvale Asset Partners, cutting staff, closing the employee residence annex, and replacing local vendors with national contracts. It described Riverside as structurally incapable of recovery. Attached projections assumed costs would continue rising at the rates Grant's approvals had created. They wrote the ending before Vanessa entered the building, Nora said. Grant had prepared the operational recommendation. A consultant named Martin Vale had supplied the buyer analysis. Martin was a managing partner at Northvale. 3 years earlier, he and Grant had served on the board of a private hospitality investment group. The connection was not disclosed in the sale proposal. Vanessa believed she was buying her way into a regional contract. Grant was using her inflated invoices to strengthen the case for selling Riverside. If challenged, the bakery could be blamed for supplier fraud. Emily's name would explain how the account entered the system. Grant would appear to be the manager who uncovered a conflict beneath him. He built an exit and gave himself a scapegoat, Emily said. More than one, Nora replied. She opened the staffing forecast. 123 positions were marked for review after acquisition. 48 were labeled likely redundant. The residence annex would be emptied within 60 days. Mateo lived there with his brother. The night porter had been in the annex for 17 years. This was no longer about whether Diane's bakery survived a bad loan. Emily opened a clean workbook and began rebuilding Riverside's performance from source records. If she was going to challenge the sale, she needed more than suspicious invoices. She needed to prove the hotel could recover without Grant's manufactured losses. Emily and Nora created an authorized preservation index listing file names, dates, locations, and system hashes. Nora saved it to the compliance archive, where deletion required a second approval. Then the office door opened. Grant stood in the hallway. His eyes moved from the records on the table to the capital planning folder on Nora's screen. Why are you reviewing executive material? The folder is within accounting access, Nora said. That was not my question. Emily closed the bakery file. The vendor discrepancies connect to the Riverside sale projections. Grant looked at Nora. Leave us. Nora waited until Emily nodded. Grant watched the door close. You have advanced quickly here, he said. Faster than most people with your background. Emily recognized the compliment as a warning. Say what you came to say. You are too close to this. Your family borrowed against a contract connected to this hotel. Your relationship with Adrian Cole is known. If you turn restructuring into an accusation, no one will see an objective manager. They will see a woman protecting herself. Did you disclose your prior association with Martin Vale? A muscle moved near Grant's jaw. That relationship is irrelevant. Then disclose it. He lowered his voice. Stop searching for a conspiracy because you cannot accept that some properties fail. Emily placed the strategic exit report between them. This was written before the losses it uses to justify the sale. Grant did not touch the page. Be careful what conclusion you attach to incomplete information. After he left, Emily returned to the occupancy records. At 6:12, Nora sent a message from downstairs. Grant has requested an emergency board vote for Monday at 9 a.m. A second message followed. He is submitting the sale recommendation tonight. Emily looked through the audit room window at staff crossing the courtyard toward the residence annex. Until then, she had been trying to keep her name out of a false contract. Now she had one weekend to stop 123 people from losing the place that employed them and, for some, the place they called home. Grant suspended Emily at 8:16 on Saturday morning. The email reached her before she entered the hotel. Pending review of a potential conflict of interest, unauthorized access to executive materials, and interference in a supplier investigation, Your system credentials and management authority are temporarily revoked. She read it twice in the parking lot. Her badge opened the outer employee entrance. The second door flashed red. Through the glass, she saw the corridor where she had spent 2 years learning every problem Riverside tried to hide. Grant had not fired her. Suspension was more useful. It removed her from the building, while allowing him to tell the board she remained under review. Nora called from an unlisted number. "My account is restricted," she said. "I can access current invoices, but the archive folder is gone. Do not try to bypass anything. The preservation index is still in compliance. Then leave it there. We use only what we saved through authorized access." A security guard approached from inside. "Miss Brooks, Mr. Holloway asked me to collect your badge." Leon had worked nights at Riverside for 11 years. He avoided her eyes as she unclipped it. "The staff meeting was strange," he said. "Grant told everyone a manager brought in a family vendor, then accessed confidential files when the deal went wrong." The story was already moving through the building. Emily handed over the badge. "Thank you for telling me." At 9:03, the board packet reached Adrian. He called immediately. "I can reverse the suspension." "No. He has accused you of unauthorized access. If you reverse it before review, he will say that proves I was protected." Adrian was quiet. "I should have examined Riverside sooner," he said. "What does that mean?" "I reviewed Grant's reports last quarter. I agreed the property might need to be sold if the decline continued." Emily stared through the windshield. "You believed him?" "I believed numbers that had passed several levels of review. Enough to consider selling the hotel." Yes. For 2 years, Emily had worked to repair a property Adrian had already begun measuring for an exit. "Did you read the staffing forecast?" "Not the current version." "The residence annex?" "No. But you were prepared to vote from his summaries." "I was prepared to consider it." Emily tightened her grip on the steering wheel. "You opened the first door for me. That does not mean I need you standing in every doorway after that. Tell me what helping looks like. Preserve the packet. Do not call Grant. Do not change my status. Remove yourself from any decision involving me. That leaves you without an executive sponsor. It leaves me with evidence or nothing." He agreed. At 10:40, Grant distributed a notice to department heads. It claimed Emily had failed to disclose a family relationship, used her access to retrieve restricted sale documents, and attacked the restructuring plan after the supplier account came under review. Attached was a photograph of Emily and Adrian leaving a restaurant 3 months earlier. It had been taken after a regional strategy dinner attended by 12 people. The crop showed only them. Grant did not need to prove favoritism. The photograph supplied no context, but context was not its purpose. He only needed the board to wonder whether every promotion Emily had earned carried Adrian's hand behind it. Mateo called her. "Half the kitchen believes this is nonsense. And the other half? They are afraid believing you could cost them their jobs. That is exactly what Grant wants." "What should I do?" "Keep normal records. Do not delete anything. Do not confront him. You sound like a lawyer. I sound like someone who knows he wants us emotional." At noon, Diane left 3 voicemails. The first demanded that Emily stop attacking the bakery. The second said Vanessa would explain that Emily encouraged the partnership. The third was quieter. "Grant says this can still be resolved if we cooperate." Emily called Vanessa. "What is he asking you to sign?" Vanessa paused. "How do you know there is something?" "Because he needs the supplier fraud to end with someone below him. You think everyone is using me because it makes you feel superior. He wrote the sale plan before your first delivery. Ask him for the date." Vanessa ended the call. At 2:15, Nora arrived at Emily's motel carrying no files. She placed a handwritten list on the table, document names, dates, and authorized folder locations. "I copied nothing restricted," Nora said. "These are records compliance already possesses." The system log showing executive edits was there. So were the vendor approvals and staffing forecast. One line was missing. "The board, packet history? Grant moved it after suspending you." Can compliance retrieve it? If they request the backup. Emily added the request to her response. At 4:30, she submitted a formal rebuttal to the board chair and outside counsel. She attached her original conflict disclosure, the full message Vanessa had cropped, the authorized preservation index, and a timeline showing that the sale proposal predated the bakery account. She made no accusation she could not support. At 6:02, Grant sent one final notice. Brooks Family Bakery would sign a supplier responsibility agreement by 8 o'clock Sunday night. The document acknowledged pricing manipulation, substituted ingredients, and improper influence through Emily. If signed, Grant could tell the board he had already identified the cause of Riverside's losses. Emily forwarded the notice to outside counsel. Grant had closed every door he controlled. Now he was asking Vanessa to lock the last one from the inside. Vanessa came to Emily's motel at 6:18 on Sunday evening. She did not bring Diane. She brought the supplier responsibility agreement. The document had been folded into quarters. Vanessa placed it on the table without sitting down. He says this protects the bakery. Emily read the first page. It did not. The agreement stated that Brooks Family Bakery had independently inflated prices, substituted ingredients, and used Emily's influence to bypass normal approvals. It required Vanessa and Diane to accept full repayment liability and waive any claim against Riverside management. Grant's name appeared only as the executive who had discovered the misconduct. Emily turned to the final page. Did he explain this clause? The one allowing criminal referral while keeping your admission. Vanessa took the document back. He said if we signed, the hotel would treat it as an internal supplier issue. That promise is not written anywhere. He said the board needed someone to accept responsibility before the vote. Emily pointed to the effective time, 8 tonight. After that, he can say he solved the supplier fraud before Monday. Vanessa looked toward the rain tapping the motel window. You want me to believe he planned this before he met us? Emily placed the preservation index beside the agreement. It contained only file names and dates already held by compliance. Riverside Strategic Exit had been created 5 months earlier. Brooks Family Bakery had entered the system 6 weeks ago. That proves he wanted to sell, Vanessa said. Not that he chose us as scapegoats. Emily turned to the repayment schedule. The total included losses from laundry, transport, maintenance, and temporary labor vendors. Vanessa stared at the figure. These are not ours. No. Then why are they here? Because once you admit your invoices caused Riverside's losses, he can attach everything else to the same explanation. Vanessa finally sat down. Grant had not admired her ambition. He had priced it. He promised the bakery could become the regional pastry partner, Vanessa said. He showed me projected orders for 3 hotels. Did he sign anything? No. So you borrowed against a promise. Vanessa's face hardened. You do not need to enjoy this. I don't. You warned me the contract was not real. I warned you not to use my name. The answer removed the argument she expected. Emily did not offer to save the bakery. She left the agreement open between them. What do you want from me? Vanessa asked. The truth. And then? The board decides what happens to Riverside. Compliance decides what happens to the invoices. The bank decides what happens to your loan. You could ask Adrian to protect us. I asked him to remove himself from decisions involving me. Vanessa gave a short laugh. You finally reach someone with that kind of power, and you refuse to use it. I spent too many years letting other people decide what my work was worth. A car door closed outside. Diane entered without knocking. Her face changed when she saw the unsigned agreement. Vanessa, we discussed this. You knew it included other vendors. Grant said the language was standard. He is making us admit to losses we did not create. He said the hotel would not pursue it if we cooperated. Emily asked, did he put that in writing? Diane did not answer. Vanessa stood. You knew he might refer it for criminal review. I knew we had no other choice. You had a choice. You chose the building. Diane's composure cracked. That bakery is all we have. No, Vanessa said. It is what you are willing to sacrifice everyone else to keep. Emily recognized the calculation. Preserve the business. Remove the person creating the inconvenience. Only now Vanessa stood on the other side of it. Grant has messages, Emily said. So do you. Vanessa looked at her. The cropped screenshot came from your phone. His pricing instructions did too. If you deleted them, there may still be a cloud backup. Vanessa's eyes shifted toward her handbag. You recorded him, Emily said. Not for you. I recorded our meetings because he kept changing the terms. Then preserve the files and send them to outside counsel. If I do that, I admit what I did. Yes. And you will let the bakery fail? I will not falsify records to save it. Diane whispered Vanessa's name, but Vanessa was already unlocking her phone. The backup restored slowly. At 7:46, the first deleted thread appeared. Grant's instructions were explicit. Use Emily's name, raise prices after temporary approval, and keep communication away from the shared vendor inbox. At 7:53, Vanessa found the recording. Grant's voice filled the room. If anyone questions the losses, your family connection explains the access. Emily brought you in. I will handle the rest. Vanessa stopped the audio. 8 o'clock was 7 minutes away. She opened a new email to outside counsel and the board chair. Her finger hovered above the attachment icon. Emily did not tell her what to do. For once, Vanessa would have to place her own name on the choice. At 8:52 on Monday morning, every chair in the Riverside boardroom was occupied. Grant stood beside the presentation screen. The sale packet lay before each director. Adrian sat at the far end of the table with no voting materials. He had removed himself from the decision. Emily entered with outside counsel and the board secretary. Her suspension remained in place. She carried only the documents submitted through authorized channels. Grant began immediately. Riverside has suffered sustained losses caused by weak controls, supplier manipulation, and undisclosed personal conflicts. The screen displayed declining margins. He identified Brooks Family Bakery as the source of inflated invoices, then showed the cropped photograph of Emily leaving a restaurant with Adrian. Miss Brooks introduced a family vendor, benefited from unusual access to senior leadership, and searched restricted materials after the relationship came under review. Diane sat near the wall as a supplier representative. When Grant asked whether Emily had encouraged the partnership, she answered carefully. She always said the hotel needed local bakeries. We believed we had her support. Not a direct lie. Something designed to survive later. Grant faced the directors. The proposed sale protects the company from further deterioration. The board chair, Miriam Keene, looked toward Emily. You may respond. Emily did not begin with Diane or the photograph. She opened the full email thread. My conflict disclosure was filed before any long-term vote. It states that I did not recommend Brooks Family Bakery and requested removal from every decision concerning the account. She placed the cropped screenshot beside the complete message. I cannot be involved in any decision concerning the bakery. Grant said, a later disclosure does not erase prior influence. No. But the approval history identifies who authorized the account. The next screen showed Grant's code beside the expedited rate increase. Emily moved through the records in sequence. Receiving photographs showed commercial shortening where premium butter had been billed. Delivery logs contained 6 signatures written in the same hand. One name belonged to an employee who had left months earlier. Grant interrupted. That confirms vendor fraud. It does not connect the issue to the sale. Emily opened the Riverside strategic exit file. Creation date: 5 months before Brooks Family Bakery entered the system. The recommendation to sell Riverside existed before the supplier Grant blames for its decline. Emily said. She displayed the executive summaries beside the department source reports. 27 alterations. Banquet income had been moved. Maintenance credits had disappeared. Vendor penalties had become hotel expenses. Then she showed the common address linking 4 intermediary companies and Grant's undisclosed history with Martin Vale of North Vale Asset Partners. Grant folded his hands. These are interpretations assembled by an employee facing discipline. Miss Brooks had access and motive to modify the files. Outside counsel turned toward the chair. That question is addressed by the preservation record. Nora entered carrying a sealed compliance packet. She explained that the preservation index had been created before Emily's suspension. System hashes matched the archived files. The edits originated from Grant's executive account, his registered laptop, and sessions confirmed through his authentication token. Automated backups showed when each summary had been altered. Grant's account. Grant's registered device. Department heads prepare material for my review, Grant said. That does not prove I ordered fraudulent changes. Emily opened the staffing forecast. 123 positions marked for review. 48 likely eliminations. The employee residence annex scheduled to close within 60 days. You called this a rescue plan, she said. It removes the workers while transferring the property to a buyer connected to your former business partner. Riverside cannot recover. Emotional appeals do not change the numbers. Emily replaced his chart with the rebuilt operating report. Occupancy remained stable. Banquet revenue had increased. Waste had fallen 11%. Once inflated invoices, missing credits, and false deferred losses were corrected, Riverside was not profitable yet, but it was recoverable. The vote secretary checked the clock. 9:37 分. Grant lifted the supplier responsibility agreement. Brooks Family Bakery has accepted responsibility. Emily looked at the final page. There was no signature. The boardroom door opened. Vanessa entered holding her phone. I did not sign it. She placed the agreement beside Grant's packet. He told us it would protect the bakery. It makes us responsible for losses from companies we have never worked with, Grant said. Miss Brooks is avoiding consequences for her own conduct. No, Vanessa replied. I am admitting it. She faced the directors. I used Emily's name without permission. I sent a cropped message to make it appear that she supported our proposal. I agreed to higher prices because Grant told me the contract was guaranteed. She handed the phone to outside counsel. The messages were restored from backup. The recording is mine. Grant stood. A private recording made during commercial negotiations may be unlawful. Then challenge it in the proper forum, outside counsel said. The board may preserve and consider it. The recording played. If anyone questions the losses, your family connection explains the access. Emily brought you in. I will handle the rest. The vote secretary set the ballot papers aside. One director closed Grant's report and pushed it away. Grant tried once more. She participated in the pricing changes. Her testimony is self-serving. Vanessa looked toward Emily. It is. I am trying to reduce the damage I caused. But Emily did not bring us here. We used her name because people trusted it more than ours. That sentence ended what the spreadsheets had begun. The board chair suspended the sale vote, placed Grant on administrative leave, and ordered a forensic audit. The supplier contract was frozen. Staff reductions and closure of the residence annex were prohibited until review concluded. Miriam asked Emily what action she wanted regarding her position. Do not decide that today, Emily said. She closed her folder. Protect Nora and every employee who preserved records. Keep Riverside operating during the audit. Remove me from all decisions involving Brooks Family Bakery. Then evaluate my conduct under the same standards as anyone else. Adrian said nothing. At 10:14, security collected Grant's access card. Emily watched the red light flash when he tried the boardroom door again. For 2 days, he had controlled who could enter Riverside. Now the system no longer recognized him. The forensic audit took 11 weeks. Grant Holloway was dismissed before it ended. The final report found manipulated vendor summaries, undisclosed financial ties, and a pattern of approvals designed to make Riverside appear weaker than it was. North Vale withdrew from the sale. Martin Vale denied knowing how the projections had been prepared, then hired his own attorney. Grant never confessed. He insisted poor controls had forced him to make hard choices. The investigators called them something else. Brooks Family Bakery lost its proposed contract and was ordered to repay the unsupported charges. The bank restructured the expansion loan only after Vanessa agreed to sell the second production space and submit to independent accounting. She also paid the employees whose overtime had been hidden. Diane objected to every condition. "They are taking the bakery from us," she told Emily during their last meeting in the hotel cafe. "No," Emily said. "They are asking you to stop using other people to keep it." Diane looked older than Emily remembered, but not yet ready to call control by its real name. "You could speak to Adrian. I will not use him to erase what happened." "What about your father's legacy?" Emily rested one hand on the notebook beside her. "My father taught me to make something honest. He did not ask me to disappear inside it." She left without returning the bakery keys Diane placed on the table. They no longer opened anything Emily wanted. Vanessa did not ask for forgiveness again. She worked through the repayment plan, restored Emily's authorship on the archived recipe files, and removed the false creative director history from the bakery website. It was not redemption. It was the beginning of accountability. At Riverside, the board appointed an interim operations committee during the audit. Emily's suspension was lifted, but she was not handed Grant's office. She received a 6-month acting assignment with written targets, monthly reviews, and an external evaluator who had never met Adrian. Adrian did not attend a single performance meeting. Emily cut duplicate contracts, recovered unpaid vendor credits, and rebuilt the receiving process with the staff who actually used it. She kept the employee residence annex open and created a repair schedule instead of treating the building as an expense waiting to be removed. Not every decision succeeded. A new laundry vendor missed its first service target. Emily underestimated the cost of replacing 2 boilers and had to revise the quarter plan in front of the board. When occupancy dipped during renovations, she accepted the criticism and changed the schedule. 6 months later, Riverside had reduced operating waste, stabilized banquet revenue, and kept all 123 positions. The board opened a formal search for hotel operations director. Emily applied. She interviewed beside 5 other candidates. When the board selected her, Adrian read the announcement at the same time as everyone else. That evening, he found her alone in the ballroom, checking the final setup for a training program launch. "You got the job," he said. "I did. And I had nothing to do with it." Emily looked at him. "You had something to do with the beginning." "Only the beginning? That was all I needed you to give me." Their relationship changed slowly after that. No secret arrangement. No executive favor hidden inside a promotion. Just dinners that became longer, arguments that became more honest, and 2 people learning how to stand beside each other without one standing above the other. A year later, Riverside opened a paid kitchen training program for adults rebuilding their lives after job loss, unstable housing, or family separation. On the first morning, one trainee burned the opening batch of bread. The woman stared at the blackened crusts and reached for her apron strings. "I understand if you want me to leave." Emily placed a clean mixing bowl on the counter. "No, I want you to start again." Together, they measured the flour, checked the yeast, and set a second dough beneath a cloth. When the next loaf came from the oven, Adrian stood near the service door holding a small cardboard tag. Emily recognized it. The bakery label from the loaf she had given him in the storm. "You kept that? It reminded me of the night you lost everything." Emily looked across the kitchen. The trainee was slicing warm bread for people arriving to begin their first shift. "No," Emily said. "That was the night I stopped losing myself." The second loaf left the kitchen on a wooden tray. This time, Emily's name was on the program above the door.